we saw more evidence of Wirtz and Ekitike linking up.
Going into it, I think there was this sort of negative feeling amongst a lot of people, I think.
There are some who were very unhappy to see Liverpool win in that way.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, giving you the inside track on all the big talking points from Anfield.
Hello, welcome to the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo, coming to you from Liverpool City Centre on an afternoon when Liverpool are celebrating getting through to the last 16 of the Champions League. Joined by Ian Doyle to discuss the 6-0 win over Qarabag. Ian, it was a game, let's be honest, that we were expecting Liverpool to win, but to win a game 6-0 is nice and a nice bit of, almost it feels like a bit of a release in what's been a tricky season.
I'd be interested to see whether there's been any other 6-0 wins in the Champions League this season. I know people will say that Qarabag weren't very good, and they weren't. They're definitely better than what they showed in the game on
They had 10 points
night.
going into the game.
Yeah, so they ended up qualifying anyway. But yeah, you can't really grumble too much. Although I know there's still a fair amount of people who are now so invested in grumbling about this season, and the manager in particular, that they were struggling to see the negatives as opposed to, struggling to see, we've been struggling to see the positives much of the season. So overall, I think, you couldn't ask for much more. Some players who needed to score, such as McAllister, had a decent enough game in terms of that respect. We saw more evidence of Wirtz and Ekitike linking up. Given the fact that Frimpong went off after about 3 or 4 minutes, so you had Endo at right back and you already had Gravenberch at centre back. The defence didn't really have a lot to do, did it, to be honest? But what they did well enough, and you even had a chance to get Ngamoa and Inyoni and some minutes, and Dallo came on and was able to avoid being sent off, which is a big step for him in his career. I know people might think we're making a bit of a joke of that, but once you've been sent off in your first 2 games, just to get through a third appearance, then people will stop talking about it, to be honest. So that's that. So overall, with the exception of obviously Frimpong's injury, very positive evening for Liverpool, and as you say, they managed to avoid the playoff round. And having said that, not going to be an easy game that they get in the next round, although the last 16 of the Champions League, there shouldn't be too many easy games, but I think maybe 1 or 2 of the other clubs, if you certainly look at Liverpool last year, that they ended up getting PSG from finishing top. Liverpool are going to play either Juventus, Galatasaray, Atletico Madrid or Bruges in the next round. Obviously, they played 2 of them already. One against Atletico Madrid, lost against Galatasaray. We know that Juventus game will obviously have an emotional significance then. And then there's Bruges, who I think I'm right in saying Teo Mignolet still plays for them, so that would be a reunion with him. But long way to go before that happens. But the main thing is that Liverpool got through and don't have to play in the playoffs next month.
Yeah, I think we'll go into the specifics of the game in a bit, but just the going into it, I think there was this sort of negative feeling amongst a lot of people. I think even before the game last night, some conversations were expecting it to be a bit of a tricky night, perhaps a bit of a, the difficulties around defence, and the fact that there was Ryan Gravenberch was kind of pressed into his role as a centre back. It needs to be caveated with the fact that it wasn't the toughest of opponents, but just to lift that sense of kind of dread almost going into it with a 6-0 win, it surely must do something for the confidence of the manager, the players, the fans. It feels a little bit like everyone's smiling this morning, and that hasn't been the case for a while.
Well, not everybody's smiling, as I said before. There are some who were very unhappy to see Liverpool win in that way. Yes, I mean they've got the next 3 games. They've got Liverpool and Newcastle at home, Man City at home, Sunderland away, and that's all in the Premier League. So they're 3 tough games. 2 of them one of them, the City game, they got a full week to prepare for that one. So in that sense, just getting that what happened at Bournemouth out of the system straight away. Now they're not really thinking of that. They'll be thinking of we just scored 6 goals, which they've only done once before under Arne Slot, which was at Tottenham. So it's almost that doesn't count. But they it's the biggest win under him, because before that was 5-0 at West Ham, wasn't it? Which was the week after the week after the Tottenham game. So that was 13 months ago now. So yeah, I mean, for all given that Liverpool have struggled to create goals from open play. Well, actually, to be fair, they scored twice from set pieces, didn't he? The free kick from Salah, who again, that's another one we haven't mentioned him. He really needed to go. He hadn't scored since the 1st of November for Liverpool. I know he'd been away, but don't forget. Some, in case you've forgotten, he didn't play a few of those games before he left. I think think it was five overall, wasn't it? Yeah, that's it. 5 that he was on the bench or the Inter game that he didn't play in. So it's been a while since he'd scored. But yeah, 2 goals from set pieces. That's 5 in the last 3 games. Was it 3 free kicks and 2 headers from corners? So they are addressing, or rather, it was something like that. You're always going to end up scoring off a corner or off free kicks if you have that many. So it's almost as though maybe the imbalance that was, let's be honest, a bit too far the other way is probably going back in Liverpool towards Liverpool's favour. I mean, Slot and the players will hope that carries on for the rest of the season. But just overall, they managed to create a lot of chances from open play. I mean, because there was a mad statistic that it's the most shots on goal in a Champions League game since records began its records since 2038. Yes, it's 2003. But the team that had the most was Bayern Munich in the final against Chelsea in 2012 at 43. And it's like, and Chelsea won that one. A little example there that just because you have lots of shots doesn't necessarily mean that you end up winning. But Liverpool stuck 4 of them away from open play, so you can't complain about that.
And the makeup of the team was interesting. I think when the team dropped, it was kind of what we were expecting. I think we expected, obviously, Gravenberch to drop back. The one who was missing was Curtis Jones, but then what that allowed was Florian Wirtz to sort of drop back in, and he had 3 players ahead of him. And that was something which at the start of the season, everyone used to be talking about the balance when they have the team and that how it affected it. But against opponents like that, it worked perfectly, didn't it? Because Wirtz was able to get on the ball, and when he looked up, he had Gakpo, Ekitike, and Salah all ahead of him, and it just looked a really sort of cohesive attacking unit, and 38 shots shows that, and 6 going in. It looked better, but the caveat be again that they're not going to get those type of opponents every week.
No, but what I would say on that is that you look at whenever Liverpool have played. I mean, whenever Liverpool have played a team that hasn't just put everybody on the ball, invariably they've scored some goals, and not always, but almost always they've ended up winning. Like, I wouldn't say Bournemouth put everybody behind the ball. Liverpool still scored twice in that game. Still managed to lose through where we've done that already. But with this one, it's just good for the confidence, isn't it? There's no way you can win 6-0 and not think, oh, that was good. And we may as well address the Frimpong now. Because that's, I wrote today, is that it opened up the question of do Liverpool need to sign somebody in the transfer window. Now, they're not going to sign a right back because Frimpong, I think it's a groin injury as opposed to a hamstring one. And, we might only be out for 2 weeks. So then why on earth would you sign a right back? Because you've already got Conor Badley's coming back next season and Frimpong will be there. And Joe Gomez could even be available against Newcastle, though Slot kind of said it was touch and go on that one. But Konate could be back now. Well, I think the real question then is the centre-back issue, because we know Konate's out of contract at the end of the season. We know Virgil van Dijk is getting on a bit. We know that Leone, he's very young, but it's going to take him a while to get back up to speed. And we know Gomez isn't always, in terms, not his fault, but in terms of fitness, isn't always reliable and available. And we've seen that, obviously. That's why Endo and Gravenberch have played centre-back the last 2 games. So Liverpool are definitely going to be signing a centre-back in the summer. And I think whether or not this is kind of, depending on how long Frimpong they know Frimpong's going to be out for, if there's any way they can possibly bring forward a signing, because they'll know I wouldn't be surprised if they've got 75% of that deal done to sign a centre back, because that's just the way that it works. But it's always, as we've seen with Mark Gay, they had 99.9% of it done, but then it's that last bit that needs to happen to make sure that it happens, because otherwise you could end up with the player doing one to Man City a few months later. So all the teams do their work. Liverpool will have the targets for the summer in kind of some semblance of order. But depending on how long Frimpong's out for, they might go, right, we need to spend the extra money, because it will be now, to try and get this person in now. But it might not be that simple.
Argument as well. I mean, you could say the same for a midfielder, couldn't you? That they could perhaps bring that forward because Szoboszlai can play at right back. We've seen Endo do it. You don't necessarily want to see it a lot, but...
Well, I don't necessarily think the central midfield is not really an area that they need to look at the moment. If you're going to send any other position, it will be a winger. So I think they're the only 2 things that they'd be looking at. They'll be the priority of the summer, and possibly a left back, depending on what happens everywhere. But also, it means that Andy Robertson almost certainly now is not going to be given anywhere. So, I mean, he started the game. He's literally played the last game and a half, hasn't he? So maybe he should almost join somebody sooner. He would have been back in the team.
Just threaten to leave and see what happens. Just going back to the game, obviously, the Frimpong injury coming out early as it did, it was a real, you could sense it in the crowd. Everyone was like, oh no. But then to go past that, Endo did a perfectly good job at right back.
It helped that they didn't really realise there was a 32-year-old midfielder playing at right back.
It did, and you know, up against, I mean, the left wingers of the Premier League, Anthony Gordon, players like that, who he could potentially come up against at the weekend. You might be sort of watching that through your hands a little bit, but we'll stay on the positive and we'll go through the goals. McAllister getting the opener and eventually getting a second as well. Good for him. You know, he's a player I think who's come in for a lot of scrutiny, isn't he? And certainly, you know, you can clearly see with him that there's been a drop off in performances, injury related, I think, with that. But nice for him to get a couple of goals, and he does that pretty well. He pops up in the box quite well, doesn't he? He scores a few headers for someone.
He likes it in Europe as well. He scored against Real Madrid, didn't he, this season? I think he got a goal against Bologna last season, I seem to recall.
A couple of headers, I remember last season at Everton and Tottenham.
He scored against Real Madrid at home as well, didn't he? So he scored the last 2 times they played them, so he doesn't mind the goal. I think the problem with McAllister is the way Liverpool have played this season, the way the season's gone, it's taken ages to get properly fully fit. And then because Liverpool have been caught out on counter-attacks a bit few too many times, certainly the first half of the season, it's exposed the fact that he's never been able to run particularly fast. And he looks slow. Yeah. But what we seen with a bit more space in the Champions League, he's kind of enjoyed that, and he has just overall been a bit. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I did the roundup of we did the ratings every single game, give players a score out of 10, and I think there'd only been 2 games that he'd scored more than 7 in. Scored more than 6 in, which was Real Madrid and Aston Villa the game before that. Since then, he's had a few more after that, so he obviously must have read what I wrote.
I'm sure he always does.
Yeah, and he has improved, but he's not the only one. I mean, we may as well talk about. You mentioned the Frimpong situation, and that short term, they'll just be hoping that Konate can be back for the Newcastle game, because then I think possibly they may look to play Szoboszlai a right back. Although he did play there in the game for Newcastle, didn't he? Way back in August.
He did, and did really well.
He did really well.
Yeah.
So that won't be anything new to them. Problem is, it won't be anything new to Newcastle either. So they might know how best to attack him, but needs must at certain situations. I mean, there'll be some people saying, well, can't you play Calvin Ramsey there? He couldn't play against Qarabag, so he's not eligible, but that's a player who, there's a reason. I mean, Slot said it in a certain, what I'd say, a Dutch way.
Yes, he did.
The other week, which
wound people up, didn't it?
Yeah, which was taken out of context, to be honest. It's like, and I think we can touch on his press conference after the game last night, where he was asked certain things and he gave an answer, and he ended up just basically saying, well, I'm not going to change the way that I am, I'm not going to say yes or no, which would be a bit rubbish for us, to be fair. Although, as we're up against deadline, if his headlines were a little, his answers were a little bit shorter, I wouldn't mind that so much. But going back to the Calvin Ramsey thing, there's a reason why he's not been playing.
Yeah,
this is a player who came to Liverpool with a lot of potential. Unfortunately for him, primarily due to injuries, he's not been able to realise it, and he's had difficulties when he's been out on loan. So he could be an option, say, if Liverpool are doing okay in a game and then they need to replace the right back, for example. That would be good, because he's not played in the Premier League ever.
I'd be surprised if he got on the pitch before the Brighton FA Cup game.
Yeah,
I think,
so
and I think everyone's just, he's a right back, play him right back. I think we've seen with Slot, he will prioritise the quality of the footballer, won't he?
Exactly,
over someone in a specific position.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, he wants to get his best players on the pitch, but sometimes that doesn't really work when you've got a lot of good players. But unfortunately for him, because I think at one point at the end of the game he had 7 players, they were unavailable. If you counted, obviously, Frimpong going off and Curtis Jones was unwell. Obviously, there's no Konate, no Gomez. Then you got the 3 who were out for a long time. Yeah. So for a squad that has deliberately not been built to be like Chelsea's squad and Arsenal's squad. I mean, let's not forget, Arsenal's net spend was bigger than Liverpool's in the summer, and people forget that. Liverpool spends an awful lot of money on players, but as Slot likes to say, although every time he mentions it, the number keeps on going up in terms of the money that they made half of what they bought, whereas Arsenal, I don't think they sold anybody of note, did they? And brought in about 250, 260 million pounds worth of players.
Bolstered the squad, didn't they?
Yeah, basically, which is what they obviously needed to do. And I think this is something that Liverpool will be doing in the summer. I'm not sure they'll be spending that much money, but it's obviously something that needs to happen. And I think what we've learnt is, going back to what Slot said about PSG, he was mildly concerned that had they got through, you'd have been playing the same players all the time, and then somebody would have got injured, and while they probably would have won the league, they still wouldn't have got through in the Champions League anyway. This time, as has been proven, they haven't been able to cope with competing on two fronts. Simple as that. Not just in terms of the quality, with all the changes that they've made, but also in terms of just genuine, fitness. So, I think, there will have to be some signs in the summer. But going back to what we were talking about, I can't see Calvin Ramsey playing anytime soon. But I can understand why some people might say that. But then again, how many times have these people seen him play apart from possibly that game against Crystal Palace?
He's a player who seems to get better the more he doesn't play.
Well, he's not alone in that. That's the same for most footballers.
Yeah,
and we know we're not singling him out because he's still reasonably young.
I'm sure I've got career.
He's still got that. He's still training every single day around these players, so he's obviously going to improve him. But I'm not sure where that's going to end up. Which is again, people saying Liverpool needs to sign a right back. Well, there's another one. That's three of them.
Yeah. You mentioned there about Alexis McAllister reading your ratings, and
I know where this
if you, like Alexis, would like to, as you should, read Ian's fine work, you want to do so safely, obviously, and to do so.
We don't want to put you in any danger, do we? We don't want to put you in any danger. No, we don't.
It'd be the last thing we'd want to do. The last thing we want to do. So, you'd need a good VPN to be safe online, like Alexis McAllister.
Yeah.
And to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, you go to nordvpn.com/bloodred. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description box below. Alexis has got it all sorted already, but you too can be like Alexis McAllister and get your NordVPN from us. Anyway, enough of that. Florian Wirtz scored a goal.
He did, yeah.
Again, the prolific Florian Wirtz scored a goal.
I read a statistic that said no player in the Premier League has done more goal contributions in the past 6 weeks than your man Florian.
He's good, isn't he?
Yeah, who'd have thought that?
Yeah, I know.
Who would have thought that this player?
I really enjoy watching him.
He cost a fair amount of money, but came with a great reputation, and actually looked quite good in the summer. It actually turns out to be quite good at football.
Yeah,
who'd have known that?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned playing slightly different role with the 3 players ahead of him, but it worked in a game. In a game, as I keep saying it, but in a game against that sort of opposition, you were able to see the quality of it, and it's a lovely finish as well.
It is great play by Ekitike. I'm sure we'll touch on the relationship that them two have got in a minute.
Do it now, if you want.
But just for Wirtz, just by himself, there was always this kind of sense that he would do a bit better in the Champions League this season. I think there's no one's talking about him adapting to the Premier League anymore. There's none of that. I think everybody knows he can do it. There's been no question of his physicality. In fact, you look at the amount of times that he's pressing the players and winning the ball off them last night, and we've seen that in the Premier League as well. And I just think he's settled now. I think it does take some players a certain amount of time to do it. I think Ekitike is obviously an example of somebody who hit the ground running, then perhaps had a little bit of a dip, but now he's come back as well. But yeah, the pair of them, you can see that they similar footballers in the sense that they're very good one-touch footballers, which is a little bit frustrating in terms of Wirtz because he could really shoot a bit sooner than he actually is. But I think he'd get a few more goals, to be honest, if he did that. And I think that will come eventually. So that's good in that sense because it shows there's still more to come from him. But him and Ekitike, they tend to know where each other is on the pitch. You saw that against Barnsley, didn't you?
Yeah.
In the FA Cup, you saw that. I think it was Wolves, wasn't it, where he set up a goal. And the funny thing is, it's more likely that Ekitike sets up a goal for Wirtz than the other way around at the moment. Although Wirtz now has overall, I think it's 7 assists, which isn't too bad for a player who some of his critics were pointing out he'd done next to nothing in the first 3 months of the season. But who would have known that season's gone for more than the opening 3 months? People just have no patience these days about anything.
The relationship with Ekitike is something that's brewing, isn't it? And it you mentioned it. They look like they're on the same wavelength. They look like they can feed off each other a little bit, and I think it's certainly doing them both. I mean, Ekitike running through for that goal, you never thought he was going to miss, did he? You know, he looks settled. You know, we've kind of said it all season, haven't we? He was the first to adapt, but he looks born in that. He's born for that shirt now, and he's someone, and Wirtz is someone that they do give you a bit of confidence for the rest of the season and what could happen.
Well, of course, Liverpool spent a lot of money on a big money striker to go with Wirtz, and the sight of him setting him up would have been great for the people who did the transfers. Unfortunately for them, it was the wrong player.
Yeah.
Not the wrong player, is like there's anything wrong with what's happened, but I'm pretty sure they saw it being Isak that was taking these chances and putting them away. But he's a different kind of player. Unfortunately, we've just not had much chance to see what he's like. You know, the Tottenham game when he was on for about 15 minutes was probably the one time when you thought, this looks like the guy who played for Newcastle, and then obviously gets the serious injury and we don't see him for a while. So Ekatiki's kind of done well in taking on that responsibility. And I mean, I'm sure some people have seen on Instagram his little exchange with Ryan Gravenberch over in playing at centre-back.
He's a crazy character, isn't he?
Well, I was about to say he's a younger lad as well. So he knowing people at Liverpool, they really like him. He's obviously already really popular in the dressing room. And you need that. You always need people like that. We could do with some in our office, to be honest.
He's done. He did the mix zone last night as well, and he's.
He did do the mix zone.
I think it was put to him that you play Newcastle. You could have joined Newcastle in the summer. And he's like, I don't care about that. You know, he seems like he's got that confidence, that swagger about him.
Well, why wouldn't you? He's not arrogant.
No,
there's nothing like that. But he does have that confidence where, he's quite open. I've spoken to him a couple of times, and he's this is somebody who, when he went to Paris Saint-Germain, he was playing alongside Messi, Neymar, and Luis Suarez, and he couldn't get in the team. And it's like, no wonder he couldn't get in the team. But he was training with them all the time. Go back to the Calvin Ramsey thing. He's going to get better, and you're going to pick up things off all these players that you're playing alongside. So his career had to go a slightly different route. But he got the experience of playing in Germany at Eintracht Frankfurt, and now he's come to England. And with the greatest respect to all of Liverpool's players, I'm pretty sure that front line of Messi, Neymar, and Suarez is probably better than anything most people would play.
Yeah,
Mbappe was. He wasn't Suarez, was he?
Yeah.
No. Suarez did go to PSG though, didn't he? Was he there for a bit?
I think so.
Did he? No. Well, I just made that up. Did he not?
Atletico Madrid.
That's it. Yeah. Sorry. Well, there you go. Mbappe's even better than Suarez.
Yeah.
So there you go. So it makes it even more impressive.
Yeah. And we'll go to someone else who is no stranger to a mix zone occasionally when he wants to. Mo Salah scored a goal.
Yeah.
And he looked. It was a nice moment actually, because he did. It looked like a bit of a weight off his. I
love the fact that people now know what a mix zone is, whereas about 3 years ago nobody knew what we were talking about. We had to explain it. And they've been going for like millions of years. Yeah, the interesting thing for me wasn't so much the goal, but it was the celebration afterwards, where it was like not exactly somebody who's quite keen at the thought of leaving Liverpool anytime soon. I'm sure we'll address that at the end of the season, but certainly there's no sense of him kicking up much of a fuss. I think it also helps that he probably knows he's going to be playing now, purely because there's not many other options. I don't think he'll play every single game. No. I don't think any of the players will play every single game. And yeah, just to score the goal, I actually thought in the first half he was probably trying too hard. I think since he's come back, I thought he had a decent game in Marseille. Some people thought he was hopeless. Well, they're wrong. I'm right. His radar's not quite there with his passing. I think in the second half it was a bit more there, and certainly with his finish. So for him to score the goal, yeah, you're right, it's probably a little bit of a weight off his shoulders, and we're coming up against, as I said, those 3 games that are coming up, and he'll be looking to improve because Liverpool are going to need it. Yeah,
and you mentioned about him being in the team all the time. Do you think that what Slot was doing, where he was leaving him on the bench and he was leaving him out, I just think he can't really afford to do that now, or do you think?
I think he can't afford to do it at the moment, but I think there might come a time where he might have to. It depends how the season pans out, to be honest. I think he won't want, while Salah is a player who hardly ever gets injured, he won't want to overburden him because he is getting a little bit older, as we all are. But at the moment, that they don't have a lot of midweek games coming up. They do have the Sunderland one. You got one against, I think, and then that's the only one in the next 5 weeks, I think. So Wolves is like the start of March. So I think that this will be a good time to probably give players some extra days off, rest and stuff like that.
And that's the importance of getting through last night and doing
exactly,
that.
Yeah. Of course, last season they did it, but they ended up having to play 2 games because they got rearranged, which was the Everton game and the Aston Villa game, both away. and when Everton's famous
Everton's
win.
win.
The
win.
Yeah. Listen, Everton fans tell me that. I'm not just saying that. This hopefully will work in Liverpool's favour because some of the players, as we saw against Bournemouth, probably do need a bit of a rest.
Just to look ahead then, we mentioned earlier the potential opponents, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, who came to Anfield very early in the season, a bit of a strange game, wasn't it, the 3-2. Galatasaray away wasn't a good performance. You'd say it was was that the first defeat of the season? It was early on, wasn't it?
No, it was straight after Crystal Palace. The second one.
Yeah.
It was the start of the run, wasn't it?
And then Bruges, who arguably you'd perhaps say would represent the easiest of those four.
They would, but then you know quite well they're going to do the draw on Friday, and so basically it's going to be Juventus or Atletico Madrid against Galatasaray or Bruges, and then I think they also do the draw of which one of those pairings play Liverpool or Tottenham, because the way that they do the draw is you're already kind of set bracket, so you don't know exactly who you're playing now, but you've got a good idea. Like,
it's quite annoying Liverpool to pair with Tottenham because they'd have been a good team to play.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I'm not even sure they can play them.
No, it's the quarterfinals, I think.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't even think they can play them then, can they? I don't know. I'd have to have a look. Yeah. I'm writing about this later, so I'll have a proper look at it.
I think you can play other English teams in the quarterfinals.
Oh, you can. No, you can play them in the next round anyway. There's no.
Right.
But the point is, I don't think the draw means that they've ended up playing them. I don't think.
No, I think that's right.
Yeah, but I know if Liverpool want to get to the final, they'd probably have to beat either Arsenal or Bayern Munich.
Yeah,
because they are. They won't. Well, I'll rephrase this: if Liverpool get to the semi-final, they won't play Arsenal or Bayern Munich until that point at the earliest. And the same, vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we saw last season Liverpool coming top and then getting PSG. I think that made a lot of people think, oh, it doesn't matter where you finish in this. But as you've just said there, I think it is important to come as high in the league as possible.
They'll get a home game. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying they get home game for the second leg in this round that they're coming up, and they get it in the quarterfinals. But then when they get to the semi-finals, they won't, because obviously the teams that finish top, and if you knock out a team that's a seeded team, as in Paris Saint-Germain did, you then assume they're seeding, as it were. So Paris Saint-Germain went to number one seeds the minute they knocked out Liverpool.
And just looking at it as a whole, the Champions League campaign as a whole, 6 wins out of the 8 games. It's been good. They've beaten some good sides in there. They've beaten Real Madrid, they've beaten Inter Milan, Atletico Madrid. Is this a Liverpool team that's making Europe shake with fear that they can go on in this Champions League run?
I'm not sure they're shaking with fear. I think they're probably not trembling. What am I doing? They're probably just. I couldn't think of anything to say along the lines of shaking with fear, but they're definitely
mildly curious with fear.
Yeah. They're kind of like looking at them like that. They are. But I think they're looking at Liverpool and going, don't really want to play them.
Yeah,
that's what we've. And that's what it was last season, to be honest. That's what it was last season. As opposed to in the Premier League.
As opposed to some Premier League sides.
Yeah, let's play them now. Yeah, so it is interesting that you mentioned the Marseille game, the Real Madrid game, Inter Milan. They didn't concede a goal in any of them. And, okay, 2 of them... I'm sorry, only one of them was at home. 2 of them were away.
Yep.
Inter Milan didn't really threaten much. Marseille had a couple of shots, but they ended up not even qualifying, didn't they? Because of the Benfica goalkeeper.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then they could end up playing them again. Real Madrid and Benfica could play in the playoffs, so that would be interesting. But yeah, let's face it, Real Madrid are going to win it, aren't they? Because
it's probably their time again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's been often discussed, hasn't it? But this idea that the current setup of Liverpool suits Europe more than it does the Premier League, because the Premier League is the way it is, so physical and long throws every couple of minutes.
You look at the table, 5 of the top 8 are English teams. It suits all of the English teams, not just Liverpool. It's all of them. It's like if you'd have said Tottenham, we're going to be finishing 4th in Champions. I know that they had a lot easier games than some of the others. And I think Bayern Munich did really well. They had incredibly tough games. But I think also what's benefited the Premier League teams is that they're used to playing so many games in such a short space of time. What will then count against them later on in the competition is because they played so many games up to that point and they'll still be competing. Other clubs in other countries won't have that intensity going into the games because they either won their league or things. But it can also work the other way around, where they're not used to playing against a team that's properly up there. It's hard to, you look at someone like PSG last season where they kind of did it the right way around. They were pretty terrible in the first half of in the league stage, just about got through. And won the hardest game, which was against Liverpool, and then after that beat Villa, beat Arsenal,
beat all the English teams,
beat all the English teams, and then absolutely hammered Inter Milan in the final. So from that point of view, could Liverpool's Champions League campaign go that way, where they started okay, then they had that dip, and now they're coming on a bit stronger? Will they be looking to do that?
We can hope so. Well, we've got a couple of shows coming out ahead of the Newcastle game, so we won't go too much into that. But just a brief look ahead. I mean, it's a big week, isn't it? Newcastle and Man City both at home, and it's these games are games that Liverpool should relish now after last night.
Well, Newcastle, they drew in PSG, didn't they?
Yeah.
PSG missed a penalty though, didn't they? I mean, Newcastle have been a bit of an odd team this season, where they've had a couple of good results, but then they've had some absolutely dreadful results, and it looks like they can't score as well.
Quite a lot of 0-0s, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, they've sold Isak, and if it would be a very different atmosphere had he been playing. So in that respect, that's removed that. I mean, you mentioned Ekatike. I don't think Newcastle fans are going to be that fussed. I mean,
he's tried to have a go. He's tried to stoke it up, but I don't think it's going to.
I actually quite like the lad they signed.
I do as well.
I think he's going to be quite good. So, but yeah, they've just not really been at Newcastle consistently anyway. So, I mean, I watched the game, or a lot of the game against Man City in the semi-final of the League Cup, and they just it wasn't like they've lost a lot of home games. And away from home, they didn't have a long spell where they just didn't win any games away from home. So Liverpool would fancy that. And then the Man City game is just one of those where who on earth knows what kind of Man City are going to turn up. I mean, when they're bad, they're terrible at the moment. But they can have a game where suddenly everything goes right. And they do tend to pick it up. They played well against Arsenal, didn't they? They played well against
and that Newcastle
Man City.
Game they played well.
Yeah, Newcastle game, they played well. They're struggling to do it consistently because, funnily enough, they're finding that it's hard when you lose all your centre-backs, isn't it? Yeah, and you get injuries. So, and that'll be a game where Liverpool, again, those 2 home games, Liverpool, if there's been any sense of unrest amongst supporters who actually pay the money, there's not really been a lot in the away end. From what, because obviously I go all the games, well, no, nearly all the games. You don't really notice it from the away support because it can be more acceptable to lose away from home, if that makes sense. But if you go to Anfield and you're drawing to Burnley, you're drawing to Sunderland, you're drawing to Leeds, you're just about scraping past against Wolves. That's the only bit you're seeing up close all the time, and you're going, what's going on here? And they do need a couple of, not say they're going to beat Newcastle 6-0, but they need a couple of games where they do show more their attacking side. And I think with Newcastle, and certainly with Man City, I don't think they're necessarily going to come sit back. I know Newcastle do try it, but they do it in a different way to the likes of Burnley, who would literally just put everybody behind the ball. Because Liverpool have to be careful, because one thing Newcastle got is the counter-attack. And that's one thing Liverpool struggled with in the first half of the season, as we mentioned before. So I think it could be more cagey than you're expecting, but not as a low blocky as we expect.
Yeah, it feels like a couple of games as well that's good for the crowd. It's like it's easy to get up for Newcastle at home on a Saturday night at 8:00.
Well, if you're not up for that game,
and then Man City,
you had a massive lie-in.
Yeah, and then Man City the following Sunday. Big games. It feels like Anfield can get behind the it's a different atmosphere than it is at home to Wolves, at home to Burnley.
Yeah, that is true. These are bigger games, aren't they? And I think, what else have they got? Other home games. They got Chelsea. I mean, I'm just talking generally later in the season. They got Chelsea and Everton as well. Everton. They played Everton, haven't they? Yeah. So there's three big ones. They got Tottenham as well.
Yep.
So they got, again, on paper these are like difficult games, but they're probably ones they've got more chance of doing well in, because of the way that they're more likely to have a go at trying to win the game, the opposition, as opposed to some of the other teams that have turned up. I mean, to be honest, Leeds was the one who just made no effort to try and win the game, and well, from that point they succeeded. They didn't win.
No, well, big week ahead, and as I say, we'll look at. So we've got a couple of shows of the Newcastle game. We'll look at that in a lot more detail. But
can I just make a point about one thing that came out of the game is that because Liverpool were winning by so much, is that they were able to give Ngamo and Inyoni
for the first time
minutes for the first time in a long time, and I think this is something that undoubtedly they would have seen this season and gone, right, we're going to put them in the first team squad because we know we can do this for them, because we're a good team and we won the Premier League and we're in the Champions League and this, that and the other. And of course it's just not happened, because it's been hardly a game. And then the more that they've lost, the more pressure on the manager. Why on earth would you put on these youngsters at this time? You know, to partly because you don't want to, expose them to something that might hurt their career at this point, or hurt their development anyway. So for them to actually have the opportunity to come on, and again, Liverpool 3-4-0 up and play, what was it? Was it about?
Best part of half an hour.
Half an hour. I mean,
I was watching Naoni for a bit.
I thought he did
he's a
all
player.
right.
He's a player there, isn't he?
I thought he did all right because he played in more of an attack team.
Yeah.
He didn't have as much. And when they played Crystal Palace, he had a bit of a poor game. He had the kind of defensive responsibility, but the rest of the team were particularly great. This is more one where he's gone into a team that's winning, playing well, reasonably strong for the players that they got available, and he was able to perhaps show himself a bit more because we already know what Ngamoa can do. And he managed. He's that combination between exciting but also raw, and you can see why he doesn't. For all those who say like, why isn't he playing more games? You can kind of see why not. But again, going back to Ramsey, what we were saying before is that these are training alongside the first team all the time now, so they're going to pick things up, and they didn't look out of place playing in the Champions League. And don't forget, Agnoni's already started. He came on a sub, didn't he, against PSV last year? Yeah, so he's already played.
He's been around the squad now for sort of 18 months, hasn't he? And he does look. You can tell, can't you, in some young players they just sort of.
He's still only 18, and Rose, was only 17, so these are still very, very early days for these two.
To be 18 again, yeah, that'd be lovely, wouldn't it? Anyway, yes, we are going to go now, and we'll be back, as I say, late. A couple of shows coming up to preview Newcastle, and we'll see you then.
You've been listening to the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.